right, welcome back to the channel. It is yet another Wednesday here at Hustler Casino Live. I'm a bit early for today's game, but it should be an action-packed lineup. We have a few players I've never played with. We have Mike X in there, we have Gaston, we have Coach Collins, and a bunch of other guys that are not afraid to put the chips in the middle. So there should be a big result. Now, whether that will be positive or negative remains to be seen. But here we go. Stay tuned and find out. I'll check in with you guys after. Alright guys, welcome back to Hustler. Today the game is 25, 50, 100, but as you know by now, that doesn't mean much because the games can get huge at any moment. In this first interesting hand, the bounty game is on, meaning if you win 3 in a row, you collect money from every player. And I have 2 buttons already, so if I can win this next hand, I stand to win around $7,000 or so. There's a raise from Francisco on the button to 3,500 after I straddled to 500. Gaston calls and I look down at Ace Queen, a dream spot when you have 2 buttons. Francisco doesn't have much left behind and Gaston's flat call doesn't look too strong. So I decide to just jam all in, hoping that I have the best hand. And sure enough, that's exactly the case, as Francisco has King Queen but decides to call anyway. Gaston has King Jack suited and also makes the call. So the good news is we got it in 3 ways as a favorite. The bad news is it's going to be tough to beat 2 other hands, but so long as we can hold, it should get the job done. The flop comes down with a flush draw for Gaston, but no one makes a pair. The turn is a 5, so if we can just find a clean river, we win the pot and the bounty game. But the river is the 5 of spades, unfortunately, giving Gaston a flush. And just like that, not only do we have to pay out this pot, but of course we miss out on the potential glory from the bounty game. A few rounds later, this hand comes up where I make it 600, having King 10 offsuit, get a few calls, and we go to a flop of Jack 10 8 with 2 hearts. The weird thing is that Gaston now leads on this flop for 2,000 when it gets to him. I have the King of Hearts and middle pair, so I think continuing is probably okay heads up, but when you consider that he's betting into 3 other opponents, probably can just let middle pair go. However, I get a little too stubborn and make the call. The other players fold at least, and we get a nice turn card. It's the 6 of Hearts. I doubt Gaston is playing a flush draw this way on the flop, although I guess he's capable of anything. But this time I felt that he most likely had 2 pair or just a jack, something like that. When he checks this turn card, it's time to transform my hand into a bluff, simply because I don't think a 10 is good enough to show down at this point. We have removal to a set. We also have obviously the King of Hearts to represent a flush, so I go for it. I throw in $6,500. Gaston thinks for a bit and makes the call, so that's not good. Looking for some help on the river, but it does not come. Once again, it's the 5 of spades, just like last hand, and once again, Gaston has the winner. However, there's still action to be had in this one, and when he checks for a second time, I think the only way we can win this pot is to bluff at it again and hopefully put him in a tough spot with any hand that isn't beating a flush. So I assemble a bet of $27,000. We avoid the snap call, so that looks pretty good. But as you guys can see, he's got a straight and he has the 9 of Hearts, which I think is a nice card for him to have. It makes it less likely I've got a flush. And I think in the end he realizes this and decides that I might be bluffing. So he makes the call, and it's a good call. We lose this $73,000 pot. Kind of an aggressive line from me, and you could argue it wasn't exactly necessary, but I also don't hate how I played this one. Just kind of hate the result, you know? But let's move on to a better pre-flop holding, Ace King. This one, there's a raise from Ohio David to 500, a caller before I make it 3,000, back to David, and he makes it 11,000. I decide to just go all in. He makes the call, and we've got the same hand. We're gonna run it twice. First board comes out ace high. Second board has a couple of clubs, and I have the ace of clubs. But then it just ends up being a chop anyway. So we each profit 300 and change. Not a ton of blood in this one, but whenever the pot reaches 6 figures, I feel like it's at least worth noting. In the next hand, Israeli David, not to be confused with Ohio David. He makes it 1400 in the cutoff, and I look down at Queen 6 suited in the small blind. Obviously, this hand has no place under a normal operation of poker, but in this particular case, I felt that Israeli David was raising pretty light, so I decided to get in there with a questionable holding. Don't try this at home, but here we go. I make it 5400. Israeli David thinks for a bit and makes the call with 10-8 offsuit, so I guess my hand isn't really that bad after all, and we go to a flop of 7-4-3 rainbow. If there were a club out there, I might contemplate a c-bet, but with no backdoor flush draw and a board like this, I don't know that it's the best idea to just light more money on fire. I was hoping for a different kind of board, so I decided to check, and Israeli David checks it back, which surprised me a little bit. Turn card is the 4 of diamonds. I check it again, and this time he checks it back too. So it feels like he's got an ace high type of hand and is just trying to get to showdown, maybe something like ace jack or whatever. But the river is a very welcome sight. It's the 5 of diamonds, yet another 5 on the river, but this time it benefits me as we end up making a very disguised straight. I would almost never have a 6 based on how this one's played out. So the nice thing here is we can go for some value that I think will look pretty disguised. I assemble a bet of $7,000, and it's at this point that the hand gets even weirder as David thinks for a while before raising to 26,000. I'm not sure what this means. I mean, if he has a full house, wouldn't he have bet sooner? Unless he's got pocket 5s, but I also think that hand might have bet on the flop or turn for some protection against ace highs or, stuff like that. So really this makes no sense to me. Same thing goes for flush draws, by the way. I would imagine he bets a flush draw on the turn. So yeah, usually when the story doesn't add up, I lean towards calling, and this time is no exception. If somehow you have my straight beat, take the money. I make the call, and he says you win. So yeah, kind of a strange hand, but of course very happy with the result as we end up somehow winning a $63,000 pot with Queen 6. Next, this hand develops where Mike X raises to 300. There's a few callers, and then Gaston 3-bets to 3,000. I'm on his left in the big blind looking down at pocket 8s. And against Gaston, who is an absolute madman, albeit a good player, I think pocket 8s perform nicely as a re-raise in position, so I make it $8,000 to go. Everyone else folds, but when it gets back to Gaston, he thinks for a bit and makes the call. As you guys can see, the man is not afraid, calling re-raises with ace-jack offsuit out of position. It's a scary feat, but Gaston is up to the task, so we go heads up to a flop of 10-9-5 with 2 diamonds. Generally, a 10-high flop like this, it's connected as well. It's going to be better for him than for me, so when he checks, I think a bet here is not the worst thing ever, but I decide to check it back and pot control a little bit. Turn card's not my favorite at all. It's the jack of clubs, so now we lose to a bunch more hands like king-queen, ace-jack, king-jack suited, what have you. Gaston now bets $8,000, and I don't think folding makes a ton of sense just yet. He might be betting a hand like pocket 7s or ace-5 suited once in a while, thinking it's the best hand. And of course, I've got an open-ended straight draw, which is not something to immediately dismiss. So for a small size like this, I continue. River does not help though. It's the 4 of clubs, just an absolute blank. And now Gaston thinks for a bit before firing 23,000 into the middle, around 2/3 of the pot size, and my hand just kind of sucks now. We also have a diamond, which isn't great because we would want him to have some missed diamonds. Also, having 2 8s sucks because what if he's bluffing with an open-ender, right? It becomes less likely as I have these 2 cards. So yeah, one of the worst hands to make this call with. Still, I give it a little bit of thought, but in the end, I just don't think I can win. And if he's bluffing, you earned it, man. So I let it go, and we get the bad news as he flips over ace-jack. Shortly after, there's a raise from Mike X to 600. Gaston calls in the 3rd blind, and I am in the double straddle for 200. I complete $400 more with king 5 off. Looking back, I think this is just a little bit too loose. Actually, a lot too loose, honestly. But anyway, I toss in the call and get immediately rewarded somehow as it comes king 7-5 with 2 clubs. So we flop top and bottom. On a pretty draw heavy board, Gaston checks, I decide to check, Mike X continues for 1500, and now Gaston makes the call, which is nice. Definitely going to spring into action now with the check raise. Could balance this out with all sorts of bluffs, so it's nice to actually have it this time. I bump it up to 7000. Mike X lets it go, but Gaston is still not convinced. He makes the call, and we go to a turn card, which isn't really my favorite. It's the Queen of Clubs. I don't really think that he's going to have a flush super often, but sometimes he will, and not just that, but this card is going to make it harder to get value from, let's say, a king or some sort of pair that we're beating. Gaston checks, and now I assemble a bet of $9,000. This is where things get spicy as Gaston elects to turn his 7 into a bluff without even having a club in his hand. The man is just super aggressive, and it's hard to hate on that. He's got style. Unfortunately for him, though, I've got 2 pair. Not only does that mean it's a good hand, but of course with the 5 of clubs, a little less likely that he's got a flush. So I decide to stick around and see what happens on the end. River card is the 9 of diamonds, also not the best card, because if he was somehow holding 6-8, which would be the most obvious straight draw on the flop, that gets there, and he's certainly capable of having that hand and, you know, turning it into a bluff on the turn and pretending he's got a flush or something. But after some thought, Gaston checks. I think if he had a straight, he probably would have bet it. But now it's on me, and I have to wonder what worse hand is going to call me after he check raised the turn. His check raise on the turn is really only representing better stuff than King 5. So I think he's either got a bluff and he's giving up, or we're being trapped by something better. Given that assumption, I decide to just check back, and he says, you win. Yeah, he decided not to go for it on the river, which of course I'm happy to see, because I don't know, if he had gone all in or something insane, it would have been really tough. Probably I would have folded, actually. But we win this one and move on to the next hand, where I've got Jack 10 of hearts, a beautiful holding. I open it up to 1000. Francisco makes the call, as does Senor Tilt and Gaston. So we go 4 ways to a flop of Jack 9-6. Top pair should be good enough. It checks to me, I bet half pot. 2000. Francisco makes the call with his straight draw. The other guys fold. There's a 6 of clubs on the turn, and I think this is a nice spot to check top pair. We pot control the times that he has queen jack, king jack, whatever. He might even have ace jack sometimes. And of course, we open the door for him to bluff with straight draws or diamond draws, what have you. So I check it. Francisco thinks for a bit and checks it back, though, which has me feeling like a jack is definitely the best hand, and especially so when we make top 2 on the river. 10 of spades is a welcome sight in case he did have something like queen jack. Now it's time to bet for value. The question is how much, and I just think to myself, how much would I bet if I had a bluff? And I think it's around 2/3 or whatever. So I assemble a bet of $6,000. Francisco thinks for quite a while now, but eventually makes the call with his rivered pair of 10s, and we end up getting what I think is probably close to the most we could have, as we collect this $20,000 pot. In the next one, I make it $2,000 to go with pocket 8s, and then Francisco just jams for around 30K on my left. He's on the button, and I've seen him do this a few times. It's usually good hands. Ace, king, pocket jacks and better, stuff like that. Once in a while, it's some crazy punt, but even if he did have some wild punt, like let's say queen 9 off or something ridiculous, those hands still are just a flip versus my pocket 8s. So it really doesn't look like a great situation. I think almost always we're in rough shape against all his hands. So I think this is a pretty clear fold, but for whatever reason, I was just in the mood to give action, especially to Francisco, who's usually splashing around. So I say the hell with it. Maybe he's got overcards. I make the call, and we get the bad news that he has pocket queens. But problem solved as the flop comes 8 high. That's right, we get there on the flop. The turn is a king, and the river is a queen out of nowhere. We end up getting absolutely cooked by Francisco on this nasty river card, although I guess you could say it was fair since he had the best hand pre-flop, but it still doesn't feel great. 58,000 going to the man in seat 5. Good for you, brother. In the next one, I've got ace queen, and this hand is somewhat in line with the previous one you just watched. I raised to 2,000, there's a call, and then Israeli David makes it 12,000. Long story short, we end up getting it all in after I put in another raise. Pocket 9s versus ace queen. Take a look at this flop. Queen, queen 9. I'm loving it until he says queen no good, and I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah, I've got pocket 9s. Damn, that's crazy. Turn card is a brick, but the river this time picks me. It's the ace of diamonds. Kind of hilarious how poker is. Sometimes you're way ahead and you end up losing. Sometimes you're way behind, you end up winning. We run it twice though, and the second board doesn't bring me any help. So this time it's going to be a chop. I kind of wanted to run this one once, to be honest, but I got the feeling that he wanted to go twice, and yeah, whatever. In the next hand, I've got a much better holding than ace queen, or I guess not much better, but at least one that feels better to look down at. It's pocket jacks. There's a raise from Mike X. Israeli David calls on the button. Gaston calls in the small blind, and I, of course, will not be calling in the big blind. I bump it up to 2,300. Gets back around to Mike X, and it looks like he's had enough of my re-raising pre-flop, even though I've had good hands almost every time. He makes it $7,200 to go. It gets back around to me, and under normal circumstances, I would be a little bit worried with these pocket jacks, but given the flow of the game so far, Mike X has been running kind of bad. I've been pretty aggressive, and I just had the feeling that he was taking a stand with some sort of hand that pocket jacks are ahead of. So I make it 25,000 to go, or 27.3, whatever. Mike X has had enough. He goes all in for 51 and change. I make the call. I ask him how many times he wants to run it, and he says once. More than fine with me, so we're off to see 5 cards, jacks versus nines. Can we hold for 104,000? Yes, we can. The river is a deuce, and we get out of this one unscathed and collect over $50,000 in the process. Very nice. You know what's even nicer than that, though? Looking down at pocket aces in an action game like this, and that's what's going on here. I open it up for $1,000 with red aces, perhaps the sexiest variant of pocket aces you could get. It's debatable. Let me know down below which one is the best looking version of these aces. But anyway, I make it 1,000, and I think the best looking version is probably the one that gets re-raised pre-flop, and that's what's going on here. Senor Tilt makes it $6,000 to go. Back around to me, and considering how deep we are, I am not going to mess around with anything fancy. Time to put in another raise. I make it $21,000 to go. Gets back around to him now, and after some deliberation, he decides to call. So $42,000 in the middle as we go to a flop in position of Queen, Jack, Jack with 2 clubs. Perhaps a little bit worrisome. Maybe he has pocket queens or ace, jack. But if that's the case, he's going to get all the money. My hand is still pretty strong, so when he checks, I decide to continue betting. I throw in 22,000, around half pot. Senor Tilt thinks for a while and makes the call. Turn card brings in the flush. It's the 7 of clubs. Considering that this is a 4-bet pot or whatever, and the queen and jack of clubs are accounted for, I don't think he's going to have too many flushes, right? Maybe ace, king of clubs sometimes, but even then he probably would have 5-bet. Ace, 10 of clubs perhaps, but again, the queen and the jack of clubs being out there make these flushes a lot less concerning. However, since he's only got around a pot-sized bet remaining, I decide to check back in position because I feel like we could induce a bluff if he's got king 10 suited, maybe a hand like 10-9 suited, ace king off, I don't know. These sorts of holdings that might decide to blast the river if they brick. And maybe that's what's going to happen here as we see the 6 of spades on the end. Senor Tilt thinks for a long time and then eventually jams for $95,000, a slight overbet into this pot. And now it's a lot of money for me to make the call, but of course there's a bunch of money up for grabs if I can successfully call and have the winning hand. So I think about this one for quite a bit. I kind of feel immediately that I'm probably going to call, but when a pot gets really big like this, I like to give it a little bit of thought at least, you know, no rash, quick decisions. But in the end, I just think aces are just too strong, and I kind of played them in a sneaky way by checking back the turn. So considering I might have induced a bluff on this river, I can't really fold. So I make the call. If he's got me beat, so be it. But he says, you got it. I turn over my hand, not interested in making anyone show a bluff or whatever. And yeah, the aces are good. We have a $275,000 pot headed our way, and we are up a bunch of money now after battling a little bit and being stuck like 30 or 40K in the first 30 minutes. In the next one, we are once again fighting against Israeli David. with ace queen. This time I've got the suited variant of it, which is quite nice. There's a raise to 900 from Coach Collins. He makes it 3,500, and I'm going to come in for the 4-bet with ace queen suited. Under other circumstances, this might be a bit nerve-wracking, to put in the 4th bet pre-flop with ace queen, but in this particular game, it feels like a super strong hand. He thinks for a bit and makes the call, and we go to a flop of king, queen, 4, rainbow. Not a single diamond out there. I would have liked to see a diamond, but still having second pair top kicker feels pretty good. I bet a quarter pot, which I think I would do with all my hands. And now he puts in a very weird raise up to 12,000. I'm not entirely sure what to make of this. I feel like if he had a king, he would just call. And if he had a straight draw or something, he would also just call. So I don't really get it. I make the call and we get the perfect turn card. It's the ace of spades. I mean, Jack 10 gets there if he was bluffing with that on the flop. But if that's the case, then again, take my money, I decide to lead for 3,000, which is completely unorthodox. I was just messing around almost, since he's only got like less than 20k behind. It's going to get in no matter what, I think. And sure enough, he just instantly goes all in. I make the call. And yeah, ace queen is good. It turns out the turn was actually the money card, as he had ace 7 offsuit, which I didn't know until right now. Kind of a weird hand, but I'm not complaining. This is 82,000 going our way. And that brings us to the biggest pot of the entire night. Needless to say, I've been having a good night, but let's see what happens here as we pick up ace king in another precarious spot. There's a blind all in from Ohio David. He's got $4,200. Coach Collins thinks for a bit and makes the call. I, of course, will not just be calling. I decide to make it $25,000, trying to get Coach Collins out of there and just get all in pre-flop versus Ohio David. But instead, Coach has other plans as he makes the call in position, and we take a flop with one player already all in, but the side pot has already become bigger than the main pot, right? There's only, like 13,000 or so between the three of us. The rest is just between me and Coach Collins. So let's see what happens. Ace king is not always the easiest hand to play out of position in a bloated pot, but it is pretty easy when it comes king, king, deuce. I gotta say, it feels like it's been a while since I raised pre-flop with ace king and smashed the flop. This definitely counts. 54,000 in the middle. We've got the absolute nuts pretty much. I bet small, 15k. Would do this with all my hands as per usual, and I'm happy to see Coach Collins make the call. Things are looking good. I assume he's got 2 outs, a hand like pocket 9s or pocket 10s, whatever. Turn card looks great. It's the 4 of clubs. No reason not to continue betting. I think I should have gone a little bit bigger here, something like half pot, but instead I went a quarter pot, which I don't really love looking back, but whatever. I bet $21,000. Coach Collins doesn't seem convinced still, and once again makes the call. Now I'm wondering to myself, does this guy have king queen or king jack or something? That would be pretty sweet. But it turns out that wouldn't be pretty sweet because the river's a deuce, which means, of course, that we are now chopping against any other king that we previously had in bad shape. But anyway, let's ignore that and just play our hand the best way possible, which in this case, I think means to just go all in. Essentially, I'm representing a full house or a bluff. Usually when I'm repping huge hands or nothing at all, I like to size up, and this time is no exception. There's around 126 in the pot, and he's got 120 behind, kind of a pot-sized all-in. So that's what I do. I announce all my chips have gone into the middle. We don't get snap called, which is great news. And of course, now we just have to wait and see whether or not we get paid off. Now, I think Coach Collins has seen enough of my ridiculous hands to know that I might have something like ace 5 suited. I might have ace queen. I might have jack 10 suited. I could have all sorts of random stuff that, goes for glory on this kind of run out. But it's also no fun for him because obviously I do still have real hands, right? Like ace king or king queen, whatever. Those are very possible as well. And it's not a fun spot for him. I think in his shoes, he can probably just fold a hand like this, but I totally understand him wanting to call and be the hero. Of course, collecting a bunch of money in the process is probably worth more to Coach Collins than being the hero, but yeah, I mean, I don't envy his spot. In the end, however, Coach Collins decides to take a stand and make the call. I flip over the ace king, and that means we are winning a $365,000 pot. And as if that wasn't sweet enough, somehow Ohio David also had a full house with 7 deuce. Not bad for a blind all in, but still not good enough to beat this ace king. And this is one of those hands that is just an absolute dream. They don't come around very often, but definitely enjoy them when they do. And yeah, we are now up a bunch of money given the last few hours. As always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands. There was also another one post-stream where I had a set against Sam Kiki and he tried to bluff. That did not work. So yeah, it was a great night. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for some final thoughts. Hello there. I think I just had the biggest win of my entire life, and I didn't really realize it while I was playing, but I'm doing a bit of accounting now, and you know, I don't really cuss on this channel too much, but holy shit. Yeah, there's not many other words to describe this. I believe I won north of $500,000. Obviously, I ran amazing. I think I played pretty well, but of course that's easy to do when the cards are going your way. It's crazy to think that this channel started with 1-3 sessions, 1-2, 2-5. The other day I was actually watching some of my old videos, and it's crazy to think about. You know, there used to be some pots that were like $40 in some of those vlogs, and now we have this monstrosity. Hell of a ride. Anyway, love you guys. Thank you for all the support, and I'll see you all next time. Until then, good luck at your tables. Peace.